Welcome, everyone. The conference is about to begin. Please note today's call is being recorded. Please stand by. Welcome to NHPCO's We Honor Veterans Partner Networking Call. During the presentation, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. Afterwards, we will conduct a question-and-answer session. You will have the opportunity to share your stories at that time. If you have a question or comment, please press star 1 on your telephone. As a reminder, this conference is being recorded. I would now like to turn the conference over to Ms. Catherine Kim. Please go ahead.
All right. Thank you, April, and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for, I can't believe, the last call of 2017. Thanks again for joining us. I know this is kind of a busy month, but just wanted to touch in and get everyone together again before the end of the year. So I'm actually really excited about today's call. We have Dr. Ed Tick with us from Soldier's Heart speaking about his organization, as well as some tools and some tips that he's going to give you. He's also going to speak a little bit about an amazing trip that he just returned from. So definitely looking forward to hearing from him. We also have with us Taryn Thomas from Kindred Hospice. She's going to speak about integrating music therapy in your We Honor Veterans program and also give you some tools to utilize if you do have a music therapist on staff, and even if you don't, then maybe some other things that you can be doing to really use music as a healing tool. And then, of course, joining us, as always, Dr. Scott Shreve from the Department of Veterans Affairs with us to give us any updates or highlights he may have on his end and answer your questions. And then at the end, we also, of course, want to leave time for your questions, but also networking. It's been quite a year filled with a lot of activities. We also want to hear your stories from Veterans Day. What events did your organizations hold? What pinning ceremonies were happening? Anything that you did, we really want to hear about, and please feel free to share those with us. All right, so without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. Just wanted to give a quick update from the NHPCO side. You should have received in your inbox on Friday our annual needs assessment survey. So typically this is a survey we send out every year that primarily has focused on our educational resources, seeing what's working, seeing if there's, anything you think may be lacking or something else that you would like added to our tools. So again, we sent that out, but this year we also added a few extra questions just to include our program in it. We always are asking for feedback, so we wanted to know how we're doing. If you've spoken with the We Honor Veterans team, how did it go? How is our website? Is it easy to use? A few questions like that, as well as a few questions on not only your hospice veteran partnerships, but rating your relationship with your local VA facility. We want to hear about that as well. So please take the time. I promise it won't take more than 5 minutes, and your feedback really, really is invaluable to us, and we really appreciate you taking the time to fill that out. You have until the end of the month, and we'll send out another friendly reminder. So again, thank you for your help with that. All right. Well, with that, let's get started, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the line over to Dr. Ed Tick.
Well, thank you very much, Catherine, and welcome to everyone. Thank you all for the good work that you do and for attending these sessions and continuing to network together and work together to find the wisest and deepest and most loving healing and transformation that we can bring to veterans and their families. So, again, my name is Dr. Ed Tick, and some of you may know my work from my books. I've published 6 books, but 2 are especially important in our field. One is called War and the Soul, and the other is called Warrior's Return. And in my books and in our nonprofit organization, Soldier's Heart, we focus on what we all call the invisible wounds of war now. That's become a standard description that all of us use. But I'm working, and my staff is working with the most invisible of the invisible. And what I mean by that is when we look at post-traumatic stress disorder and moral injury, we're really looking at, there's lots of great work being done in neuroscience, the new brain chemistry, lots of community efforts that are being made, and good alternative therapies that are being offered. But what we don't do well enough, and what my staff, my books, and I specialize in, are looking at the emotional and the moral, the spiritual, and the community wounds that result from military service and from participation in war. There's actually a worldwide warrior tradition and warrior spirituality that comes from other cultures, from indigenous cultures, from the world's spiritual and mythological traditions that we hardly know, or our military people are hardly aware of these, and those of us in the healing professions are hardly aware of these traditions, and don't really utilize them. At Soldier's Heart, I've been working with our veterans since the end of the Vietnam War, before PTSD was even a diagnosis, and I have spent enormous amounts of time and effort traveling all over the world, working with other societies, working with warrior cultures. I've just come back from my 17th trip that I lead to Vietnam every year, so I work deeply with the Vietnamese people and their traditions, as well as with our veterans and bringing them over there. And what we find is that there is a world spiritual warrior tradition, and that we can best understand the wounds, the invisible wounds to our veterans, when we understand warriorhood, when we understand its moral and spiritual base, and when we don't pathologize PTSD or moral injury, but rather understand them as inevitable changes that people go through who have gone into military service and experienced warfare, and when we normalize rather than pathologize the transformations, we accept trauma, including the terminal process, the dying process, as opportunity for growth and transformation. And when we apply the worldwide spiritual warrior traditions, we can achieve extraordinary dimensions of healing, of hope, of reconciliation, and of what we all like to call closure for those people who are suffering deep and unresolved wounds from war. So my organization, Soldier's Heart, specializes in this, and we run intensive healing retreats, workshops and trainings, and overseas journeys that very intensively focus on all of these, and we have many, many, many different practices taken from world warrior traditions that we give our people for healing and for reconciling with their service and coming to peace with it. So I've only been asked to speak for 10 minutes and then leave time open for questions, so I'm rushing here a bit, forgive me. But I do want to tell two quick stories. As I said, I just went back to Vietnam for the 17th time. And lots of our veterans who go back are trying to finish the work of grieving, healing, reconciling that they're not able to do stateside. They're not able to do in the counseling session because they're only with the therapist, but not with either brothers and sisters or former antagonists or out in the world. And people want to do something as well as talk and share and tell their stories. So back in Vietnam, and I have taken people who have serious illnesses or who expect they're terminal and may leave us within the next 6 months or a year, but they've traveled back to Vietnam to complete the process. In Vietnam, we're able to go back to their areas of operation, their AOs. We're able to meet with Vietnamese people. We're able to tell our stories to the Vietnamese, and they tell them back to us, and to participate in death and dying and grieving and healing rituals in Vietnam with the Vietnamese. And so whether I'm taking a veteran back who wants to complete his grieving process and go to where perhaps he took life or his own people were killed. This last trip, we took a man who's actually served in Vietnam with his best friend from high school. And we found the exact spot where his friend was killed, and we were able to do a memorial service for that friend who was killed 50 years ago, right on the spot where he died. And our veteran had been carrying this as incomplete and brokenhearted for 50 years, and no matter how much he talked about it, he didn't feel complete with letting this spirit go. But when we got back to Vietnam, and with the Vietnamese as well as with Americans, and on the spot of his friend's death, we were able to do a profound grieving and releasing the soul ceremony, and our veterans utterly transformed by it. Another quick story is that I was working with another Vietnam veteran who was dying of stage 4 lymphatic cancer, and he had wanted to go back to Vietnam, but he couldn't because of his health. We were able to bring 2 Vietnamese people here to the United States, and one in particular had been a teenager during the war, and our vet had a deep moral injury from the abuse that his squad had done to a teenage girl during the war. Well, the Vietnamese woman came and listened to his story and witnessed his story. He told his story, and he also heard her story of encounters with the Americans during the war. And there was the most beautiful, loving connection between these two, so much so that our veteran's moral injury was cleansed, and he actually left money in his will to do charity works in Vietnam. And after he passed, we worked with his family and built what the Vietnamese call compassion houses, single-family, weatherproof, flood-proof dwellings in his name from the money he left behind that were gifted to disabled Vietnamese veterans. So even leaving, he was able to leave a legacy where he gave help back to the people he thought he had harmed. And so these 2 stories really give us a lot of guidance in how to work with veterans, and especially in this case the terminally ill Vietnam veterans, or Vietnam veterans who may not be terminally ill presently, but they really have profound issues over death and dying, over the lives they lost and lives they took that haven't been resolved yet and can be resolved during the terminal process. So very briefly, some of the things we do is, well, we have annual Memorial Day retreats, and we really treat Memorial Day as a time to go into deep grief, and we have a whole series of ceremonies and rituals that we take people through so that they can be in their grief and release that grief. We also teach that while the psychological interpretation of nightmares of the dead might be judged as pathological and disturbing, the spiritual interpretation is that the souls of the fallen are coming to us in our sleep and trying to reach out to us. When I teach the spiritual interpretation to people, that there are souls on the other side who are not at peace and who need a relationship with you, then through guided imagery, through active imagination, through doing good works in the world, as that one veteran did, leaving money behind for other disabled veterans, for setting up altars in memorial to people. All of these are different rituals that we can do for veterans who are in the terminal process, or veterans who have really troubled relations, ongoing troubled relations with death, with dying, with the people they lost and the lives that they took. And all this works. It works. So I just want to say a few more words about what we're dealing with at the end of life and some of the hospice interventions. First of all, of course, we have to look at the the reason our veteran is dying and whether or not it's service-related. And, of course, among Vietnam veterans, the deaths are very, very often service-related. There were about 2.7 million veterans who served in Vietnam. There's less than 1 million that's still alive now. And so diseases from Agent Orange and stress-related diseases and accidents and suicides have been far, far more deadly than combat itself. So veterans need to deal with what they're dying of and whether it's service-related and whether or not they feel like they are unrecognized victims of the war and what to do about it and how to restore honor. And the most important thing is that we do restore honor. We need to make meaning of the service. We need to deal with whatever leftover feelings and unresolved issues they have, and we need to help our veterans decide how they would like to be remembered. We should expect PTSD to intensify. It often becomes confused with dementia because some of the symptoms look the same. We should expect that the dead and the dying and from the past come closer to people, and there's an opportunity to finally work through difficulties and secrets and stories they couldn't tell at the end of life that have never been worked through before. So that demands a lot of courage, open-heartedness on all of our parts as care providers and hospice workers, such that we can finally give a meaningful and honorable experience at the end of life to our veterans who may have not had what they need to heal and come home all during the life cycle. So I think I've spoken for about 12, 15 minutes now, and so there's much more to share. I'll be quiet so we can have some comments and questions.
Oh, and Dr. Tick, please feel free to keep going, or if there's anything else you think of that you'd like to share as well.
Well, okay, I can keep going. I've used, as I said, there's worldwide warrior, spiritual warrior traditions, and I use many of the practices from other warrior traditions for our warriors. So, for example, in Vietnam, every family has, no matter how tiny their little house or hut is, the main edifice they have in their home is an altar. It's an altar for their dead and their fallen, and they believe in the Buddhist tradition that the 4 generations of ancestors hang around. The souls stay here for 100 years, and they're near the family, and we can relate to them. Native Americans have a very similar tradition, and even in the Jewish tradition, a tombstone is not set up for a year after a person's buried because the belief is the soul is still lingering. So all of these traditions teach us that even after somebody is gone, their soul is still nearby, and we can continue to work our issues out with them and reconcile with them. So I very often suggest that our veterans build altars to their own fallen and altars to anybody whose lives they've harmed or taken. And if they have nightmares or dreams or memories or fantasies about any of the fallen, go to the altar and talk to that person. Certainly, as counselors and therapists, we can guide people in guided imagery work to talk to the souls on the other side. When a person has been in the military, and especially when they've been in combat and taken life and lost life, they are deeply bonded to death itself. And death, as one veteran called him, Mr. Death. Mr. Death becomes a familiar that they have profound relations with. I looked at this very closely in my books. There's a whole chapter on relations with death and the dying in my book, War and the Soul. So I suggest that. But what I'm really urging us to do is to look at the rituals and ceremonies that do exist in our own traditions and in others and use those actively during the terminal phase with our stricken veterans to enable them to reach peace before they pass. And many veterans, I'm sure many of you have heard this, will say, I want to try to cleanse myself and make peace with what I had to do in the combat zone before I die, before I have to go and meet my Maker, because I'm really scared of how I'm going to be judged on the other side. So it's really important that we let them confess, tell their stories, and find ways for helping them resolve it before they leave us and leave with a still burdened conscience and soul. And we can do this. These active rituals really work and give people extraordinary relief. Now I can pause and see if there's anybody who wants to respond.
And as a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question or have a comment, press star 1. And I do have someone on the line of Donna Lawson-Kochi from Seasons Hospital. Please go ahead. One moment.
I'm not hearing anything. Are we still waiting?
We'll move on to Dana Davis from Livingston Memorial. Please go ahead.
Hi. I was wondering if, you talk about the veterans dealing with and resolving their issues before they pass on. And I was wondering if you do anything or there are things that can be done prior to, like the current military soldiers who are active right now, but there are going to be veterans. I have a couple of sons who are Air Force officers, and they talk about some of the people they are responsible for, and how we talk about how some of them have taken their lives.
Yeah.
And I said, why couldn't they just go to counseling? And don't you guys have a good counseling program? And he said, yes, but some of them either don't want to let others know that they need counseling because they don't want to be kicked out of the service, or they're afraid that it's going to affect their promotion. Correct. And I thought, how terrible, because they need help now, not, they're young getting out of the service, and eventually, they will be dealing with death when they get older. But right now, instead of having to worry about all this stuff these many years until they die, to deal with it now when they first come out, or while they're experiencing it.
Now, I want to affirm your observation that we can do things, we can create interventions and programs and practices now, so it won't burden them for years or decades, and they don't have to wait till they die. And some of what we can do is really necessary and humanistic and spiritually based, but also controversial. So, for example, some chaplains are running prayer services not only for our fallen, but for all fallen. Down in the sandbox in Afghanistan and Iraq, some chaplains will run prayer services for the civilians who were killed. Some will even courageously include fallen foes in their prayers. Sometimes chaplains have gotten in trouble for that. It's the right thing to do. World warrior traditions teach us that we have responsibility for the souls of the lives we've taken. And one story about going back to Vietnam was I was with a Native American warrior who was a Vietnam combat veteran, who, when he killed his first enemy combatant in Vietnam, he bent over and he took sacred herbs out of his pocket, and he began doing the warrior ceremony he was taught to do growing up on the reservation. His sergeant came over and cursed him out and bashed him over the head and called him insulting racial names and ordered him to stop the ceremony.
Wow.
Well, 50 years later, we went back and we found that exact spot, and he did the ceremony then. And he had nightmares of this person his entire life, for half a century. After we could go back and do the ceremony, the nightmares stopped, and the burden on his heart lifted, and he became he became a model citizen back on his reservation, and then he began teaching younger veterans the warrior traditions. So, yes, we can do a lot. Yes, we should do it immediately. Yes, the sooner we do it, the better. And it is somewhat troublesome in our military, and there is some resistance to it. The other piece that you said about get into counseling now, let's all remember that the only military workers who retain confidentiality are the chaplains, not the behavioral health workers. So go to a chaplain, and it won't be put onto your permanent military record, but go to a social worker or a psychiatrist, and it will. And that's really problematic. But they need help, they need support, and they need to know that there are safe people to go to. So either chaplains or finding their own private therapist outside of the military so it doesn't harm their career is really important.
Yes, that's what I was telling them, that, you know, if they're affiliated with a church or something like that, go to there, because then there will be some confidentiality. When you're talking money and you're paying someone, it's going to be on the record. And I said they need the help and stuff. So, you know, and then both of my sons are in special ops, so there's a lot of things that are going to be quiet and that they can't talk about. And then I know that they even are going to be experiencing it, you know, upon their death. They're going to be thinking about those things too. So they have to also deal with it, not just their men. So I was just, you know, I'm as a mom, I'm concerned that they need to deal with it now and not wait till later on and have to have a burden on their heart years and years and years.
Right,
so.
You're right on target. We know that the sooner after a trauma we're able to talk about it and achieve catharsis, express our emotions about it, the sooner after the trauma we can get the help and express ourselves, the less damage it will do. The longer we hold it in and keep it in secret, it really twists us up inside, and everything that happens developmentally from that point on is poisoned by the impact of the unresolved trauma. So you're right on target. And regarding special ops and your children in special ops, they're not supposed to talk about stuff. And we hear that all the time. Let me share an easy trick that I use. Carl Jung used to tell some of his patients, I don't want to hear your problems, just tell me a story. What do you mean tell me a story? Just make up a fairy tale. I do that with special ops people. No, don't tell me where you serve. Don't tell me any names. Don't tell me the places. Make up a story. Put it on the moon. Put it on Mars. I don't have to know the real names, but I do need to know your stories. Yeah. So they're not. Yeah, it works. It works.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Tick. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Bless you and your family.
And your next question comes from the line of George Weinberg from Cornerstone Hospice. Please go ahead.
Hi, Doctor. Thank you very much for what you're doing. I am a Vietnam Marine, and
welcome home, George.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I've also had the opportunity to go back to Vietnam 4 times since 2000, and I help escort veterans back, but I also bring along their family members as much as possible, because that seems to be a major key for their recovery, to be able to bring a daughter. And I had one particular Marine that I did a memorial service for him up in Cantien, and he lost some of his best friends, and his daughter has never seen him cry before. And when I do a memorial service, I have everybody form a circle facing in, and I have them go around and talk about what this spot meant to them. And he started talking, and he just broke out in tears. And it was, and afterwards, I'm talking to him because the emotions came back, and he said that was one, and he's been back to Nam more than I have, and he said that is the most incredible experience he's ever had since he's been back. And his daughter met her dad for the first time in a different way, and it just made all the difference in the world.
Yeah, that's beautiful work and good work. Thank you for that story. And let's all remember, because your story indicates this, that the family members report that psychic numbness, the dead heart, is the most difficult symptom of PTSD to live with. And so when you have ceremonies like you facilitated in Vietnam, and the families see the hearts breaking open, and finally all the emotion that's been stored up for decades is released and the heart comes back to life, it's miraculous, it's beautiful, and it heals everybody.
Yeah, sure does.
Yeah. So, and approaching these issues of death and dying and working for resolution of them really does give us that opportunity to finally break the heart open again and release it.
You know, we also every time I go over there, we have an opportunity to meet up with North Vietnamese and Viet Cong who we fought against, and we meet for dinner or for lunch and spend time talking about the same battles we were in.
Yep.
And the healing process that goes on there is incredible as well.
Right.
The forgiveness.
Yeah, I do the same, and it's wonderful. I was there for Veterans Day this year, and we had an entire Veterans Day retreat, not just a meal, but we spent the entire day exchanging stories in just the way that you're sharing. And I'm glad you do it. Maybe you and I can share notes about this work, after on another call beyond this.
Yeah.
But you and I are affirming that this kind of healing is deep, is penetrating, is transformative. It really works. Yeah.
Yeah, including for myself. So
yeah,
it's
amen.
Good.
Of course.
Amen is right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next we have Adriana Zora from Untitled Hospice. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, and I just wanted to tell you this is the first time that I am able to have a conference like this. I was in the military myself in the 3rd Armored Division in Germany. My husband also was in the service, and he ended up getting hurt in Saudi Arabia. We're both in the line of I work for a hospice, and he works for a cemetery. We honor our veterans, and we are trying to do as much as we can here in Corpus Christi. And just listening to your stories, this has just been so educational. As we serve them, now we have a story to relate, and they may have a story to tell us. So I will be following all of you and just listening of your word of wisdom so that we can relate to our chaplains, work in our communities, and just be here for our veterans. Thank you so much, all of you, for all the information.
Beautiful. You're welcome. A beautiful comment like that makes these kinds of conferences and all the work we're doing in our solitude very, very meaningful and something we can all share and be proud of, that we're all part of a very important healing movement together.
And next I have Winston Weekly from Kindred Hospice.
Yes, Dr. Tick, thank you for your work. A Vietnam era veteran here also. And I want to know what is being done or has been done to ameliorate the negative reception of returning veterans of the Vietnam era. My reception coming back was extremely negative, as you can imagine.
Yes.
What is being done to assist Vietnam era veterans who may not be dying, but who are wrestling with the reception they received as compared to the heroic celebration of current veterans?
Yeah. Well, this is an important national problem that you're putting your fingers on accurately. First, let me say, and George, who spoke a few minutes ago, can attest to this as well, that when we bring American veterans back to Vietnam, unlike the negative response that you got coming home to this country, universally in Vietnam, the Vietnamese honor and thank and respect American veterans. And they say, you are not to blame for the war, for what happened. You were good warriors doing what warriors are supposed to do, which is serving their country when they're told to and when they're asked to. And you're not responsible for any of the negative things or immoral things that happen. So lots of our veterans who go back to Vietnam say, I was treated better going back to Vietnam than I've ever been treated in 40 or 50 years back home in America, and I do feel honored and respected as a warrior there. So that's one matter, and that really means an entire shift in the way America thinks. There still are a lot of programs regionally around the country trying to make up to Vietnam veterans for the poor reception they got at home. So there are large and small gatherings of Vietnam veterans. There are parades that still welcome Vietnam vets home. And the country, in a spotty way, is trying to make up for the wrong it did to the Vietnam warriors. In addition to that, I believe, and some people share this, that the very strong positive response that younger warriors are getting are in part our national guilt for how poorly the country treated returning Vietnam veterans. And the Vietnam vets need and deserve a lot of the welcome and appreciation that the younger vets are getting. And this is really a matter of public education. The veterans are not the problem here. And it's really incumbent upon all of us to speak as much as possible in our communities, in our institutions. The VA is pushing VA community partnerships to get non-veteran American adults as involved as possible, educate them into the reality of what military service and combat service costs a person, and for the public to come out and create all kinds of possible events. In my book, my more recent book, Warriors Return, there's a list of about 30 or 40 different community events that people can do without professionals necessarily running them or being there, but memorial services and speak outs and reading programs and veteran art shows and veteran music shows. I could go on, but the point is that communities can do very much for Vietnam veterans and for all veterans, and the veterans aren't the problem. The broken relationship and the lack of responsibility on the civilians' part toward the veterans is the problem, and that's where we all really need to work hard and re-educate our public.
Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome home to you, too.
And next I have Irene Henderson from Kindred Hospice.
Hi, I have a question. How do you handle the very short length of stay in helping dealing with these issues? Some of our patients are only on service for hours or days, and we see that, we send in our chaplain, our social worker to help them with their burdens, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of time to, go through different rituals in that. And I was just wondering what you would advise for these very short length of stay veterans that have a lot of issues.
Yeah, that's a really important question, and thank you for bringing it up, because we all get trapped in needing and wanting to give more than we can. So a few ideas here. One is I work really hard with the regional hospice I'm working with to get the right volunteer for the veteran. And it can work really well if you can get a veteran volunteer to work with a veteran, or somebody who represents some aspect of their service. So I was working with a terminally ill World War II veteran who was Italian-American and felt horribly guilty because he was involved in the invasion of Italy during World War II. And he felt like, I'm an Italian-American. I went to war for one of my countries against another one. I was able to find him an Italian immigrant woman who survived World War II as his hospice volunteer. And so even though we didn't have a lot of time together, we only had a few days, this dying veteran and this woman who had survived World War II in his region talked so much and they bonded so deeply, and she thanked him for participating in the invasion and freeing Italy from fascism, so he was able to die in peace. And, that was serendipity that we were able to create that. So what I'm suggesting is that even when we only have a few days to determine what's most important to the veteran, to really talk with the veteran or the family about how do you want to be remembered, what kind of funeral do you want to have, what part of your memorial in the future would you like your military service to be, and to get in the most important rituals or the most important volunteers or human connections that we can find when we only have a few hours or a few days left. It's not enough, but it can go a long way in resolving some of those end-of-life issues that have been lingering for decades.
We have an expressive arts therapist, and I think maybe if the social worker or chaplain, identifies something on their initial assessment, we could send in our expressive arts therapists who do guided imagery. If they think that's appropriate, that might help too.
Oh yes, and that's actually perfect because the imagery and perhaps the visits from the other side can become very, very intense during the terminal process. So yes, bringing the arts in so that they can externalize them and leave them behind for us, not carry them with them, is a really important intervention.
Well, thank you so much for all of that, Dr. Tick, and I'm sure there's more questions and comments out there, but I did want to make sure that our next speaker has some time as well. But
yes, for
if you're
sure.
able
I apologize to everybody.
No. We welcome it and
rich.
embrace it. Again, thank you for being on, and if you're able to, I would ask that you would stay on for the rest of the call just in case anyone does have any questions. But
sure.
But if not, partners, if you have anything else, feel free to email us as well. Nice transition, as you just mentioned, speaking of the arts. Wanted to introduce Taryn Thomas and hand the line over to her.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. All righty. Great. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here to present today. Actually, it's quite an honor because the profession of music therapy formally began after World War I and II. You had community musicians of all types going to veterans hospitals and playing for musicians. And what began to happen was the patients began to have notable physical and emotional responses to music, which led to doctors and nurses requesting the hiring of musicians by hospitals. It became evident that the hospital musicians needed additional training, or prior training, to entering the facilities. So the demand grew for a college curriculum, and that's how the profession of music therapy was actually born. So it's quite an honor to present and talk about music therapy with veterans, since that's how the profession was actually born. I actually been practicing music therapy now since 2009, and I've been practicing hospice music therapy since 2012. One of the things that we do here in the hospice setting with our veterans is we do a We Honor Veterans ceremony for all of our patients that come on to service that are veterans. And what that ceremony may look like, it will involve the opening song, the poem, and usually and of course the official song from their particular branch of the service. So that's part of what we do, and it's a very nice ceremony that we do for all of our patients that desire to have the ceremony. Again, because Dr. Tick, what you were talking about is so true. Many times the experience wasn't always a positive one, and sometimes they come back feeling a little bit angry and bitter, and they're not really interested in in the ceremony in that sense. So what music therapy looks like for that patient, I may go in as a music therapist working with that individual patient to help them with their emotional expression. And that can involve music making, it can involve music listening, and it can also involve legacy projects. So music making, I have a gentleman that I'm working with. He was a drummer in the Marine Corps, and he's unable to sit up, but he lays flat on his back. So I bring him the ocean drum, which is sort of flat, and he's able to just tap it. And if you tap it, it sounds like a snare drum. So we always do the Marine Corps hymn, and he loves to tap it out with his fingers. So that's music making for him, and it just means so much to him. Now he's declining, so my care plan for him has actually changed now. So now it's really music therapy for to support his comfort. And I know that brings him comfort, so I literally sit with him and I may tap just the side of the guitar and softly hum and or sing the Marine Corps hymn for him and continue on with other music from there. Music listening can just be just being at the bedside with someone and really giving the support to the patient, and sometimes, especially if the family is involved, having the family to participate, giving the patient opportunity to share some of their own stories from their time in the service, what things were like. And the music at that point really takes a back seat because it's all about the patient getting to express. But what the music therapist does, I continue to play while they're talking as to provide like I like to call it like a holding, almost like a safe place. The music provides some positive, I can't think of the word at this time, sorry, just a positive place for them to be, literally in the music. And then there's legacy projects, which are involved sometimes actually recording some of our patients, telling their story, what their journey was like in the war or in the time that they served, and then putting music to that, or helping them create poetry or create words of expression that they want to leave for their family members. Helping them with pain management is another one that we also do with the music therapy piece. Helping them with traumatic brain injuries, helping them with PTSD, helping them to cope with that by providing music as a tool. So music could look like anything from just instrumental, it could be improvisational music, and helping them with the emotional expression through that as well. So there's a lot of things that we do with the music therapy piece, but our ceremony that I want to talk about briefly, again, I want to go back to it right quick, is that we have a veteran that works with us, and he actually puts on his uniform, and he goes in during the ceremony, and he presents a certificate and the whole nine to the patient. But what's so nice about that is there's a connection. You know, when that patient sees that gentleman there dressed up in that Army, Navy, whichever the uniform is, it's just so special and so touching. And what we provide with the music really is it's a backdrop. You know, it's a way for them to have something that they can hold on to at the same time. So giving them that positiveness and that opportunity to be recognized. And sometimes patients come on to our service later rather than sooner, so sometimes the patient is unable to respond, but the family is so appreciative that we're taking the time to honor their time and to say thank you for serving our country. So it means an awful lot to our patients and to families as well. Any questions?
And as a reminder, that is star one if you have any questions or comments. All right, your first one comes from the line of Max Lorman from North SOR University.
Yep. Hi, Karen. Definitely appreciate your time talking about music therapy. I am actually a music therapist myself. I work for North Shore Hospice and Palliative Care here in Evanston, Illinois, and so I find your commentary on interventions with working with veterans very refreshing. During my internship, I had a veteran. I believe he was from World War II, and he had difficulty with Parkinson's in terms of the focus of goals on rehabilitation for gait and mobility, and so he really had a strong affinity, obviously, towards patriotic songs during his time of service when he was in the Army during World War II, and it was neurologically the benefits of entrainment and rhythmic auditory stimulation to patriotic songs actually improved not only his gait and stride length, but it helped with mobility in terms of symmetry and the placement of his feet, and he stopped having the symptoms of Brady dyskinesia and the freezing gait that's quite common with Parkinson's. So I think in general, working with veterans and members of past military service, there's just sentimentally this connection to patriotic songs and songs of that era in kind of helping them reflect sentimentally of the legacy that they left for themselves and the service that they carried out so heroically during whichever theater of combat they were in, but also it helps them kind of transport themselves back to those times in when they were, trying to find the courage and the bravery to fight so valiantly during such, stressful and sorrowful times at times, and kind of allowing themselves to reconnect to the fact that, they were doing this for their country. And in hospice now, I've been working in hospice probably 4 or 5 years now. I've been music therapist since 2010. But oftentimes with life review and legacy projects, which I do often with veterans, it really helps them kind of create a holding environment for themselves when you do the music and you do, whether it's songwriting or poetry, or you're just going through active music making, or they're just going through therapeutic singing, all of a sudden they can reflect more effectively upon the trauma they experienced and kind of find the right healing properties for themselves to allow themselves to say, okay, I know the trauma that I experienced. I know what I know the service I went through during those times when I was in combat, and I thank you. It's like a big thank you on the part of the veteran. So
absolutely.
That's all. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And you're absolutely right. It's amazing to see, how music has such a positive effect on patients, especially our veterans, and given what they've gone through and continue to go through. It really is something so powerful. I actually had the pleasure of being with a family where the patient's roommate was actually a veteran, and he asked the family could he sit by the bedside. So he sat there and held his hand as he was taking his last breath, and it was so powerful. But what and again, the music therapy piece, I was there just quietly, not overshadowing what was happening between the two of them, because I could see there was a connection there, and just being there, providing some soft music in the background, giving the family the opportunity to grieve, and also this veteran that was there with his buddy. It was just so powerful. So you're absolutely right. Thank you.
And next, we have Frances D'Amato from Campus Hospice. Please go ahead.
Thanks. It's Compassus here in Arizona. When I have I'm volunteer and bereavement coordinator here in the White Mountains, and I have 2 veterans. One has a therapy dog, and the other one actually does dress in the uniform. And then when he goes, we have the certificate, we have the pin. The music itself, as several have heard too, was instrumental, and it was actually their anthem, whatever branch of the service they were in. Mm-hmm. We did that on Veterans Day as well, and it was tremendously touching. And I also had the honor and the privilege of presenting a certificate and a pin to the very first Navy SEAL. It was quite touching, but I think that the vet to vet, and I actually put it out there when I was looking for volunteers, that I was looking for veterans to visit with veterans, because so many times when they are at the end of life, they look back and they don't want to talk to a little lady sitting there knitting. They want to talk to a veteran who can understand and appreciate where they're coming from and where they're going, and their fears. So I think that having veterans as volunteers is very important. And as far as the vet to vet, I think that it makes it a little bit easier and eases that pain and transition of the final journey.
Yeah. Thank you. That was very good. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you again, Taryn, so much for joining us and sharing that. And again, if you're able to stay on the line, and if anyone has any questions later on, feel free to reach out. All right, want to go ahead and pass it on over to Dr. Scott Shreve.
Thanks, Catherine. I'm still digesting the wonderful dialogue that happened earlier on this call, and just wanted to express my appreciation really for everyone that was speaking, especially Dr. Ed Tick, and Cher. I feel like my role is so much more mundane in the sense of moving things forward in very concrete ways to help veterans get access to their VA benefits and to make sure that the care we're all providing, both VA and non-VA providers, addresses many of these issues. And I had just a couple of reflection comments, and then wanted to share some updates, and certainly open up the line for questions or comments. But the We Honor Veterans program, and I've heard it said, how do you change a culture? And the best response I've ever heard is, you change a culture one person at a time. And the We Honor Veterans program is just one of those that it feels like, from my perspective, that the proverbial snowball is rolling down the hill, and more than 3,400 community hospices have made a commitment to improve care of terminally ill veterans. And it just feels like it's becoming a natural part of our culture to say thank you for your service. So that was one there, and the other theme that I kept hearing was this veteran-to-veteran volunteer and the impact of that. I've seen that firsthand. I'm not a veteran. I work very hard to be good at rapport building and to be as close as I can to the veterans and families I care for, but I will never be able to bridge that veteran-to-veteran bonding that goes on. And Catherine, that reminded me of our No Veteran Dies Alone program, where Catherine and I have been collaborating on really building a solid curriculum that in large part could be done virtually. You could go online and get some very digestible video training about how to be a good volunteer for veterans approaching end of life. But whenever we get veterans who are willing to be those volunteers, I think it just adds an extra special delivery there. All right, so that's enough of my reflecting, and I'll get back more to the mundane, concrete issues that we have to deal with daily, and just put a real shout out. I had the opportunity to speak with the CEO, the head of the National Hospice Palliative Care Organization yesterday, and boy, the energy that came out of that call, and really a passion to improve care for all people approaching end of life. But a theme that I think all of you have heard is, how are we going to really move this care further upstream so it doesn't occur mostly in just the last few weeks of life, and that we can take on people with serious illness well before their death, and likely have more time to deal with and adequately address many of the issues that have been discussed on this call. I'll just spend a minute and then open it up here. But I just want to spend a minute on concurrent care, and this issue keeps coming up. And this is where, let's say, a dually eligible veteran has access to their Medicare hospice benefit, but then in some cases may have availability of treatments for their terminal illness that could not routinely be provided by a community hospice. It may be a more intensive palliative radiation program. It may be one of the newer immunologics. You've probably seen the commercials for Keytruda and Opdivo, whatever it is, but there could be care that the VA could provide that isn't readily available at the community hospice. And there's barriers to doing both at the same time. Some fiscal intermediaries will tell the veteran you have to disenroll from your Medicare hospice if the VA is doing anything related to your terminal illness, and that gets that really frustrates me that enrolled veterans may not have full access to their VA benefits. So I just wanted to let you know that we're really moving forward as best we can to try to collaborate better with Medicare, try to work through some of the regulatory barriers, and I believe you're going to hear more and more about this. I have the luxury, really privilege of partnering with Dr. Vince Moore from Providence, and there'll be an article in a major journal coming out soon that shows when enrolled veterans get access to both this hospice benefit in the home as well as care through the VA, that it really doesn't cost any more and may in fact cost less. So it sounds kind of odd to say making more care available ends up costing less, but until you look at the data, you just don't know the answer. But I'm convinced that engaging hospice and palliative care helps to make better decisions. Whether they're cost effective or not isn't as important to me as much as getting the right care where it's needed. And I want to stop there and just do a check-in, and I'm open to try to answer any questions and address any issues on your mind.
And again, that's *1 for any questions or comments. And first we have Andrea Zamora from Untitled Hospice. Please go ahead.
Yes, the question that I have is, I serve with hospice, and when I see the veterans and they approach me, I went to the VA here in Corpus Christi, and unfortunately they told me that I will have to supplies or I will have to apply to the VA at McAllen, that the physicians at the VA cannot give an order for a patient to go to hospice. So what I've been seeing is that some of my veterans are at home. They don't really go and see a physician. They just dependent on the VA, and we cannot get that order from the VA, so we cannot serve them. How can I service them? How can I go and apply, or what can I do with this issue?
That really strikes me as an unusual situation. VA physicians order hospice care daily, nationwide. If VA is going to pay for the hospice care, a VA physician must deem the hospice care appropriate, or the veteran appropriate for hospice care, and part of that is ensuring that the veteran is electing to receive hospice care. If you're able to send in, I know Catherine and I have worked, there's a We Honor Veterans email. If you want to send in the specifics of the challenges you're running into, I'm happy to work with a point of contact down in the Corpus Christi area and try to kind of dig into this a little further to see what some of the barriers might be.
Thank you very much. I would appreciate that.
Sure.
Next, you have John Marson from Kindred Care. Please go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Doctor. My name is John. I'm the Director of Veteran Services for Compassionate Care, and we're a hospice that covers all of Delaware. We currently are in the process of something, and I'd be interested in your thoughts. We've identified a process guide, to quickly, when we receive veteran patients, enroll them and kind of streamline eligibility here in Delaware. And part of that is due to the fact that Delaware is such a small state, and then also just, the good work by the people in the Wilmington VA. But we really are starting to form our conversation with our community partners, particularly our referral sources, and talking with their discharge coordinators about kind of formulating a timeline for somebody with, we deal with a lot of COPD and cardiac patients. So as they approach a decline in health, to really, and I think you mentioned it, Doc, look at some of these things that will assist the veteran or the surviving spouse when they're really in those kind of like discharge coordinator loops where they're going in and out of the ER and they're really not quite hospice eligible yet, for instance, aid and attendance. And the goal of the program is to kind of set conditions so when they come on hospice, we've already sort of aligned those things by having visibility and working with the discharge coordinators at our partner referral sources. And so I wasn't sure if anybody had something out there, or if you guys had visibility on a sort of product or a process where we really look pre-hospice to start implementing things for folks in kind of that, emergency room discharge loop. Thank you.
That's a great question, John. I want to share with you what VA is doing nationwide and see if there might be an overlap. So Dr. Finn and Dr. Wang developed an algorithm to predict hospitalization or death in veterans, and it uses 160 variables. The nice thing about the VA is we have this electronic health record, so you can have this kind of instant access to this huge database, and they validated this algorithm that gave a prediction. How risky is this veteran for hospital admission or death in the next 90 days? And so it's called a care assessment needs score, and it's in the literature, and I'm happy to give you references on it. But so what our palliative care program did, very similar to what it sounds like you're trying to do, is we said, boy, we have this care assessment needs score for every veteran that's had one clinic appointment in the VA system. So that's the vast majority of veterans in our system have had at least one appointment. So why don't we just look at the sickest of them, and it's normalized on a scale from 1 to 99, 99 being the sickest patient or most high risk for admission or death. Why don't we just look at those 98s and 99s and try to drive, like you're talking about, drive at VA facilities? Could somebody take a look at this veteran and see if they need a palliative care consult or not? And it may be 6 months before a potential death. It may be a year before death. We don't know. But we think that that's what I'll call an enriched population that's at probably high need for the possibility of palliative care. Not a guarantee, mind you, and I just put that out there that a whole lot of people with non-palliative issues get readmitted on a regular basis, and my example will be serious mental health. And oftentimes palliative care isn't the solution there. It's a more intensive mental health program. But that sounds very similar to what you're doing. And the Wilmington VA, I don't know how actively they're participating in it, but we're reporting out to that facility on a quarterly basis how well they're penetrating in that sickest of the sick veterans. And I don't know if we could put you in contact with somebody at the VA to help promote kind of those assessments or engagement of those sickest veterans in some way.
Thank you. Next question comes from the line of Robin Schaefer from Heartland Hospice.
Hi, Robin.
Hi. I was wondering if I could get the email address of Karen, the music therapist, that I could pass along to our music therapist.
That sounds great. Maybe Catherine can help there.
Yeah, feel free to email us at veterans, and we'll put you in touch with Taryn.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And next we have Lady Renee Young from Baptist Hospice.
Was that Renee?
Hi, good evening, everyone. This has been some phenomenal information. I work out of the Yazoo City area. I have a couple of veterans, and one of the young ladies was saying that when you get them and you only have them like for 2 days or 3 days and then they pass away. Well, I've been accountable with one I had for about 2.5 days, and he was waking up with, all kinds of dreams and screaming out and wanting to tell his story. And I don't think the family was really knowledgeable of everything because they was like, you're stressing yourself, you're stressing yourself. And I was telling them, I said, no, let him tell his story. Please let him tell his story. And he would tell that story over and over. And the more he told about the story of how he's taken life and how, he's seen life, pass all around him, he started to find that peace. And I was telling them, I said, now you see, it's not upsetting him. He's finding that peace. And we were able to pray about things. But I am a chaplain and a bereavement coordinator along with a volunteer coordinator. So I'm wearing a lot of hats. I see a lot of things. And, this is really good information for me today. I'm grateful for it, and thank you, guys.
Well, thank you for sharing. I love that advice about telling a story. I think that's I put that right up there with one of my other favorite questions. Are you at peace? And that sounds great. Thank you, Renee, for your kind comments.
Yeah, this is Ed Tick. I also want to thank you, Renee, and I want to emphasize a point that your story reminds us, and that is, just as we said earlier, that the public needs to be educated to their responsibilities for our warriors. It's not the warriors' fault that they were neglected. It's the same with the families, and your story really shows how much the veteran needed to tell his stories, and that the family didn't understand at first. They were either frightened or didn't want him to be in pain or didn't want to be exposed to the pain themselves. But you really helped the family be the receptive container and vehicle for the story. So let's all remember that, and that we really need to do good work like you did, educating and preparing the family and the loved ones to be able to listen to the stories and then to carry them after the veteran leaves us. We're very much about helping our veterans and their family members create the legacy and the military history that this family is going to be carrying.
The next question comes from a line of John Marson from Compassionate Care.
Hey, Doc, I'm sorry to ask 2 questions in one meeting. I know that's...
there's an extra charge for you're in.
But we've been hard pressed at this for a while. We reached a level 4. We're going to be reaching level 4 in about 4 months, and we dumped a lot at it. And in doing so, we identified a couple of things. I wasn't sure if you had thoughts. So there's about 3 items. One of those is, with aid and attendance, there's a financial requirement that the services be in place prior to the VA approving it, and it ends up being a financial barrier for a lot of our folks, and we use a referral source. So I'm wondering if the VA would consider, or if there's any precedent where if somebody comes on hospice, it becomes a presumed need for aid and attendance or an easier way to get it. And this is all meant to keep that patient in the home as long as possible, which is 99% of our patients' wishes. And quite frankly, I think it's also, a lot of these folks end up going to an inpatient unit in Delaware, and it ends up being a higher cost to the VA, just based on, the ratio of what that aid attendance at $1,700 a month ends up coming up versus, a couple $100 a day for an inpatient unit and a less satisfied family and patient. So that's sort of one piece. And then the second one is kind of expand on my previous colleague's comment about the telling of stories. So being a combat vet, I was really having a lot of trouble getting our vets to volunteer. And I thought it kind of went back to the same challenges you have getting soldiers to do things, which is they didn't really have anything to do. It was more about, when you said, hey, would you like to, visit with a veteran on hospice, they couldn't conceptualize what it would be like except a negative thing. And so we gave them a task, which is the Military History Project through the Library of Congress. And we've had pretty good results. I mean, we've gotten 3 vet volunteers who come on board now and sit with our guys. And we haven't had too many folks who want to tell their story, and I think that's just a piece of being a veteran. But essentially, it's encouraged the vet volunteers to get out there because they have a task and a purpose. So we've had a lot of success in line with the previous, like I said, my colleague who just spoke previously. So I'll stop there. But if you don't mind feedback on the first question.
Yeah, definitely, John. It's a really good question, and I want to set the stage just a little bit to say how complicated the Department of Veterans Affairs can be. So aid and attendance is handled, it's under VBA, the Veteran Benefits Administration. So it's a monetary benefit as I understand it, and it in no way should impact the provision of hospice. So, for example, if VA is paying for the hospice care, the aid and attendance is a completely separate issue from a VA perspective. So if you believe veterans are being denied in some way aid and attendance under the VBA, I need to get you in touch with the right people in the VBA to make sure that Wilmington VA Medical Center is following the guidelines there. I don't know if John's still on the line, but if I understood his barriers correctly, it was sounding like aid and attendance and hospice were kind of being mutually exclusive, and he was looking to combine them, and there really shouldn't be any reason that they can't be combined. I just wanted to let him know it's not under the veteran VHA or the healthcare part of the Department of Veterans Affairs.
All right, I just wanted to jump on real quick and make sure the line is open for everyone. If you have, questions for Scott or Dr. Tick or Taryn, or if you want to share your Veterans Day event or anything that's been happening, or even just some highlights from the past year, please feel free to share. We have about 10 minutes left, so just wanted to make sure we got a bit of time in.
And next we have Rhonda Van Meter from ProCare Hospice.
It's actually the Antelope Valley branch. This is Lori Mowry. I just wanted to speak to the fact of the veterans telling their stories, and I'm a social worker here at the hospice, and one of the things that's worked really well for me, particularly with our Vietnam veterans and the whole issue of stoicism and not wanting to be vulnerable in front of their family or fearing that they'll see shame on their family's face for things that they tell them they did. I have had a couple of veterans who wanted their families to understand why they were numb with them or why they were distant, but they couldn't do it all in that moment. And part of their therapy and part of their gift to the family was in helping them to write letters to the family that they would receive after the death. And in that way, they were able to be very, very open, uncharacteristically emotional with their feelings and with the family. And I saw it bring a lot of healing and comfort to the veteran before the death, and I saw it bring a lot to the family after the death. So we can get creative with the ways that we allow veterans to speak. And that's just one that's worked really well for a few of my veterans.
Next, we have Bruce Norman from Kindred Hospice.
Hi, I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I've been listening with great interest on that. I do a lot of work with Vietnam veterans. One of the things that I would like to challenge all of us to do is to make sure that we take care of the families as well as the veterans. We have a lot of program for the veterans. I deal with families that are disconnected or disoriented, and even if they weren't married when they were in combat, that's affected their interpersonal relationships over a period of lifetime. And also, if they were married, you have the deployment issues with the children and so on. The other thing I want to do is just, we did a Veterans Memorial Service here in Marion at the Senior Center. I had 42 veterans that we pinned, most of them Vietnam veterans, and some of them in tears after we got done. And they told me that it was the first time they really felt that the country had accepted what they had done, and I understand exactly what they're doing. And so the mayor was there, and I was able to set an appointment with him to talk about We Honor Vets, and so it was a really good experience. I just wanted to pass that on.
Next, we have Vanessa Solis from Providence Hospice. Please go ahead.
Oh, hi. It's Vanessa Salinas up in Anchorage, Alaska. I just wanted to share an experience that we had with our We Honor Veterans ceremony around Veterans Day. And we normally invite a group of soldiers from JBER, which is Joint Elmendorf-Richardson base here in Anchorage, and the particular unit couldn't make it this year, so 2 weeks out, I had a contact, a volunteer who works at JBER, a veteran, and she managed to connect me with the veteran coordinator, volunteer coordinator on base, who sent out my request for active duty soldiers to help us pin the 15 veterans that we have that live at one of our assisted living homes here. And the response was absolutely phenomenal. I ended up having 4 or 5 who signed up. I had such a small group, but I had about 15 soldiers who contacted me wanting to participate in the pinning ceremony. And it's very, very powerful when you have these active duty soldiers, men and women, coming and meeting with the men and the women who served in World War II and Vietnam. And it was an absolutely phenomenal event. We had our Senator, Lisa Murkowski, came and actually went to some of the rooms of some of the veterans who couldn't make it to the group pinning and went and thanked them separately. So I highly encourage people to see if you can't connect with whoever coordinates volunteerism on base, because they might be able to get the word out about our program, and they're usually really, really helpful and excited to participate. That's it.
Next, we have Kathy Costin from Kindred Hospice. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. We had the very wonderful experience of having the Wall That Heals here in San Angelo in November. And the reason that was so special is that we've had difficulty in the past actually getting the wall here for various reasons. So we offered a little tidbit. We were going to present a brick from the Hanoi Hilton to Pat O'Neill, who was the person who actually organized and got the wall here to San Angelo. And as soon as he found out he was going to get that brick, he couldn't wait to get here. I had the pleasure of presenting that brick to him because it was procured by a relative of mine who happened to be in Hanoi when they tore down the Hanoi Hilton. And he wanted San Angelo, Texas to be known as the place that presented this brick to the wall so that it would travel with the Wall That Heals all over the United States and San Angelo would be recognized. The reason being, for one, we were from this area. Another is that he trained and even presented training at Goodfellow Air Force Base here. He was a Vietnamese linguist. So now when we presented the brick to Mr. O'Neill, he held on to it, and I tried to hand him the microphone, and I offered to hold the brick for him while he talked, and he would not let go of it. So it was an amazing experience. These bricks are given to people who have had an impact in improving things in relation to Vietnam, or have done some moving things. Senator John McCain has received 2 of these bricks. Ambassador Madeleine Albright, or Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, received one. 3 ambassadors in Vietnam were presented with these bricks. It was just a very special, moving moment that I wanted to share with everyone. This is in reference to Dr. Tick's talk about rituals and how things as simple as a brick from the Hanoi Hilton can have such an impact on people.
Next, I have George Wanberg from Cornerstone Hospice.
Yes, I just want to let you know we had a great November. It's something that we gear up to. I run the veterans program in 7 counties, and we have over 50 veteran volunteers that work for us. And we had an opportunity to get in front of over 1,500 veterans face to face with a salute and a pin, as well as 1,000 widows. We gave flowers out to each one. But what's really nice, what we started to find out, we've been doing this every single year for a number of years, but we in Memorial Day, we started a new program to honor the widows and do the same kind of ceremony for the widows out there. And I'll tell you, the response that we got in assisted living facilities, nursing homes, they came down with photographs of their loved one and just thanked them so very much for what they accomplished by being a family member. And I just want to say it was overwhelming.
All right, I know we're right at the end of the call, so maybe go ahead and make this last question or comment, the last one of the call.
Our last question and comment comes from Adina Davis from Livingston Memorial.
Hi. I just wanted to say it's perfect timing because the gentleman just before was talking about how they did something else, a spinoff from what you guys had started. We also did something with the military spouses because the National Military Spouse Appreciation Day is the Friday before Mother's Day. And so we've been doing this now for a couple of years. Maybe this will be the 3rd year that we'll be doing it, where we honor the military spouses. And like he said, they are so thrilled to be able to be honored. And one of the speakers, I think, talked about challenging people to not only honor the veterans, but the military spouses and the mothers and the, family members, because they all serve too. But there is a National Military Spouse Appreciation Day, and it is the Friday before Mother's Day. We also give them a certificate, just like we give the veterans with the veteran's name on it as well. We give them we pin them just like we do the veterans, and we give them a flower. And it's just been really great. It all started because we had a double Purple Heart who was being honored, and at the end of the ceremony, he said, "Do we do this for the military spouses?" And he wanted to start that, and he and I were starting to do that, and then he ended up dying before we had our first ceremony. So we are doing it in honor of him. But it's just a great thing, so I would challenge other people to also do the same.
That's beautiful. This is Ed Tick. That's beautiful, and I want to urge everyone to not only take up this idea, but also go back and read the original proclamation declaring Mother's Day a holiday. It was originally founded by women who had lost loved ones during the Civil War, and it was meant to be an honoring of women and families and memorial time for all the fallen. So connecting the Military Spouse Day on the Friday before Mother's Day with Mother's Day is on target and visionary, and we can even help renew the original meaning of the Mother's Day holiday by connecting them and everybody becoming aware of this.
Well, thank you, Ed, for sharing that. I wasn't aware of that, and yeah, definitely good to keep that in mind as National Military Spouse Appreciation Day comes up next year as well. Again, thank you everyone so much for joining us today and for a wonderful 2017. It has been a good year. We are so appreciative and happy and proud to share the work that all of you are doing, and we really just can't say thank you enough. Again, we'll really appreciate if you'll fill out that survey, and we want to make sure that 2018 is an even better year ahead. Again, if any questions come up and you didn't get a chance to ask, feel free to reach out to us, veterans with an S at nhpco.org. Again, thank you so much to our speakers for joining us, Dr. Ed Tick, Taryn Thomas, and Dr. Scott Shreve. We appreciate your time as well. So to everyone, wishing you a happy holidays, and again, look forward to what 2018 will bring. Thanks again.
Thank you. You may now disconnect.